Red, blue, yellow, gold, 32 main games, 90 spin-offs, $17 billion in sales, $64 billion in merchandise sales, at an estimated $95 billion. Pokémon is worth more than Star Wars, Harry Potter, and the MCU. But how do you create the biggest franchise the world has ever seen? Here's everything you need to know about Pokémon and its latest installments, Sword and Shield. The creator of Pokémon is Satoshi Tajiri. As a child, he was known as Dr. Bug to his friends due to his hobby of insect collection, which led to a desire in becoming an entomologist, a literal bug doctor. A couple of factors altered this course. Firstly, his hometown of Mashida, Tokyo, was quickly urbanizing, dramatically impeding his ability to find and collect insects. And secondly, he discovered arcade games and became enamored with titles such as Space Invaders. In his spare time, he deconstructed his Nintendo Famicom just to see how it worked, and even won a contest run by Sega revolving around a video game pitch. In the early 80s, Satoshi created his own gaming magazine, where he'd share tips and tricks, Easter eggs, and other tidbits. The magazine was handwritten, but proved quite popular, with its best-selling issue selling 10,000 copies. Its name? Game Freak. It caught the attention of illustrator Ken Sugimori, who jumped on to illustrate content for the magazine. As more contributors came on to create material for Game Freak, Satoshi decided to try his hand at game development. Along with Ken, the pair founded Game Freak the Studio, and their first game, Quinty, was published by Namco. A year later, when Satoshi got his hands on a Game Boy, he envisioned bugs crawling between two systems via the link cable. He went to Nintendo with his idea for a creature collection and trading game, and whilst the company struggled to wrap their heads around the concept, they were impressed with Game Freak's Quinty and decided to move ahead with the project. Shigeru Miyamoto, creator of Mario and The Legend of Zelda, was tasked with mentoring Satoshi. The development of the game Capsule Monsters, or Capumon, took 6 years, nearly bankrupting Game Freak. The team almost gave up, and Satoshi relinquished his salary in order to pay his employees. They were saved in the 11th hour when Creatures Inc., the developers behind Mother, invested in the game in return for 1/3 of the franchise rights, the same cut that Nintendo enjoyed. Upon release, Satoshi was extremely concerned that, like Nintendo, players would not get the game. On top of that, the Game Boy wasn't nearly as popular as the Famicom or Super Famicom. But Satoshi had nothing to worry about. Pocket Monsters became an instant success and almost single-handedly made the Game Boy a hit. In Japan, there were 2 versions, red and green, with blue becoming a mail-order exclusive, featuring new dialogue and updated graphics. In America, the games were based off of the updated blue version, as the source code for the original red and green was too unstable to tamper with in order to localize. Therefore, the games in America were released as Pokémon Red and Blue. Nintendo poured $50 million into marketing the game to American children, with the localization team even suggesting that the cute Pokémon be beefed up. Nintendo Japan refused to do so, seeing the whole appealing to American kids problem as a challenge. It wasn't a challenge, however, as Pokémon Red and Blue were just as much of a success, if not more so, in the US as they were in Japan. And the rest is history. The Triforce of Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures Inc. formed the Pokémon Company, and the franchise would for over 20 years rake in money via games, trading cards, toys, clothes, movies. If it exists, there's a Pikachu of it. Each subsequent installment in the main game series adds new features and new Pokémon, bringing us to the latest installment in the franchise, the 8th generation Sword and Shield. Development of the games began immediately after the release of the previous 7th gen, Sun and Moon, on the Nintendo 3DS. The team spent a year drawing up concepts for the titles before entering full production. Across Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures Inc., almost 1,000 people were involved in the development of Sword and Shield. The games take place in the English-inspired region of Galar, sporting industrialized towns and wide open spaces known as the Wild Area. The team wanted to capture the essence of the Nintendo Switch as the most powerful and best console to play Pokémon on, therefore revolving these new games around strength and being the best, like no one ever was. Sword and Shield will have a heavy focus in battling and competition, with Pokémon literally becoming giant and imposing, beefed up, if you will. This new feature is known as Dynamaxing, with some Pokémon able to change form as a giant, an ability called Gigantamaxing. Players can Dynamax and Gigantamax their Pokémon in gym battles, as well as face off against Dynamaxed, Gigantamaxed Pokémon in raid battles with 3 friends. Speaking of gym battles, Sword and Shield will be the first games to feature exclusive gym types depending on which version you play. On top of the usual version-exclusive Pokémon, some of these Pokémons are Galarian forms of older monsters, with a handful of Pokémon getting new evolutions. Trainers give their creatures Pokejobs, resulting in experience gains and rare item acquirement. If you ask me though, Pokémon should Poké-seize the means of Poké production. Rounding out the new features are increased customization, camping with your Pokémon, and autosave, finally! The trainer players assume the role of will begin their journey along with their rival Hop, and choose one of 3 starters from Professor Magnolia, Scorbunny, Grookey, and Sobble. The trainer will travel across Galar, facing off against gym leaders on their way to the Pokémon League, where they aim to dethrone Champion Leon, the older brother of Hop. Other challenges will include additional rival trainers such as Breedy and Marnie, whose fanbase Team Yell will do everything they can to impede the trainer's progress. One of the biggest concerns amongst players has been the fact that the game will not feature all 800 Pokémon. Game Freak rebuilt all of the in-game models from the ground up, and simply did not have the time nor resources to make this a reality. Personally, I would rather a slimmer Pokédex with a focus on newer Pokémon. That to me is always my favorite aspect of a new game in the series. Despite this issue, Sword and Shield will undoubtedly be a hit for the Pokémon Company, building off of the tremendous success of the Nintendo Switch. Which version are you picking up? Which starter are you choosing? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe for more Pokémon content. Now, go out there and catch 'em all!